are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me again, it's Kevin Durso. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. It's the last show before real hockey, right? We've talked about the preseason the last couple of weeks, but starting this Friday, the 21-22 season kicks off officially, and I am very excited.
As you should be. I mean, really long wait to the regular season. I've kind of hated this offseason a little bit in that sense because
me too.
When you do what they've done and you make a lot of changes, this is all I've listened to or watched people go back and forth about for the better part of 2 months, close to 2.5 months. I mean, it feels like, how long ago are we talking? I guess like late July was when really all of this went down. It was mid to late July.
But that's the thing about this team, though, is while the season, like this, it's okay. Yeah, this all happened in late July. It's felt like a very long couple of months. The short off season somehow felt way longer than usual.
Oh, it felt long to me. Absolutely. But that's my point. Like, to do all this stuff, I mean, the Ryan Ellis trade happened on July 17th, I think is what it was. And the first game of the regular season is October 15th. That gap of that much time, there's too much speculation going on, too much of wondering what is it going to look like.
Too much uncertainty. Yep.
And I kind of just start to not be able to stand that because I don't want to keep dealing in hypotheticals anymore. So how will Rasmus Ristolainen look? Or like, I just don't want to even think about whether or not it's going to be more like the analytics say or more like what people who use the eye test say. Let's just play the games. Let's just actually stop with what's on paper.
Let's just play the games
and play.
There it is. That's exactly right. Like it's, and even the preseason. We talked about the team not really playing together and guys playing on off nights and, Rasmus Ristolainen playing first line minutes in his first preseason appearance and, but towards the end, we did see the real, pretty close to the real roster a couple of times. So we have a little bit of a sample size, but again, that is preseason hockey and we all know that you're taking preseason hockey with a massive grain of salt.
To an extent, yeah, I mean, I don't want to just say what I already had in mind this early because about the whole overall scope of the season because it's really early to get there. And
we have a lot of show to do.
Well, and I see a tab that kind of indicates where I wanted to go with this by the end of the show, so I don't want to throw that banner up. I guess maybe we'll start here actually and just
we might as well
put a bow on the preseason. I know I've kind of used that
couple of times. And we'll talk about the bullies later. Don't you worry.
Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. You have it's funny. We both came into this with like beefs today of some kind. Like
we both have agendas to settle on today's show. Absolutely.
Tonight, whenever you're listening.
Yeah. Either way, scores will be settled. Maybe not, but
no, nothing's gonna be settled. But it doesn't matter.
Things will be said. It's a bold prediction for a podcast, I know. But things will be said.
Things will be said on a podcast?
I know. So
right,
either way, down the stretch here, Boston, New York, Washington. Where do you want to start?
Well, it's really, I think the only game that was really worth talking about extensively is the Washington one again, because that was the close to full lineup kind of thing, and it's actually like, there's almost less news from watching the preseason games and more from the stuff that happened in the days between these games because we knew what was going to happen. We knew that because of the fact that there was a game on Monday night and a game on Tuesday night, they were keeping guys on the roster for longer to play those two games out without having to say, I don't know, like without having to use Claude Giroux 2 games in a row on a back-to-back in the preseason. Why would you do that? You don't want to play that. You don't want to use Sean Couturier back to back. You don't want to use some of these other guys. You definitely didn't want to go with your goalies that way, and they didn't. Like everything kind of lined up a certain way, so everything was on track the right way. And I didn't really take like Monday's game. You wanted to take a little more stock because of the fact that they dressed closer to full lineup. It was funny. They actually played like near a full lineup, in our eyes, on the previous Saturday against Washington, and then less of one against Boston. Like there was still a line.
It's very strange.
There was still a line or two that you went, oh well, that's not going to be the regular group. Okay, Right.
They chopped it back up a little more in the preseason style.
Yeah, it was
less than we thought, more than we thought they were going to.
Sure, and it was mostly that way. Like we certainly looked at the team that played Boston and said, close enough. I mean, it wasn't like you sat there and were like, what kind of lineup is this 4 games in the preseason? Right. But definitely Game 5, definitely the one against the Islanders where you go on the road and you're definitely, especially when you're going to a minor league facility,
in a game that's not going to be on television.
Yeah.
Like that's how small this game is. It's not going to be on television. It's at a minor league facility. You knew that was going to be a night where you saw a whole lot of Phantoms. That was the Phantoms' first preseason game.
Kind of, in a way. But that was the thing. Like, there's been one topic of conversation I guess I do want to bring up from these 3 games because it came up twice, if you will. Carter Hart played Monday's game.
Right.
And once again, Carter Hart looks really good.
Yeah.
So there's nothing really to take away from that about the goalie other than your number 1 guy played like your number 1 guy against Boston as well. The only goal that Boston scored was a power play goal in I guess by that point it was the middle of the second period. Like it was a scoreless game for a good.
It was a nice tight game.
Yeah, I mean, which take it for what you will because Boston was not playing the typical, like the top line did not play. They didn't even really play their second line. I think that their best player, I'm trying to remember who even played in that game, but I mean, like I know like Anders Bjork played or something like that, or no, Anton Bleed. I'm sorry, Anders Bjork is playing for Buffalo now. Anders Bjork, Curtis Lazar is playing for Boston. Like it's not your. There was no Marchand, no Pasternak, no Bergeron. I don't even think that the next, like, no Taylor Hall. Like they didn't play half of the main guys. So you were playing when they say the B team, this really meant the Boston Bruins B team,
the Providence Bruins, right?
Very much so. So I think what people didn't like about that is the lack of domination. Like, and
you should beat this team 5 or 6-0, right?
Well, and it's not even giving up the goal because they gave up a goal to a guy who I think is going to make their team. I mean, Jack Studnicka had the best game of any of them, and that's fair. He kind of should at that level when you're playing close to top minutes. But I don't like. So it's lack of finishing though. It wasn't like they didn't get scoring chances. They were playing against. First of all, they were playing against a goalie who's going to play in the NHL this year because Jeremy Swayman was in goal, so he's going to play at the NHL level. It's by the way, that's going to be an adjustment process because we're so used to when it comes to Boston,
Tuukka
Rask, and even over the last couple of years, Yaroslav Halak too. That's different.
That's going to be a weird one.
Right, like you're going to have to start to get used to it. And Swayman played last year, so Swayman's not brand new.
He saw some time, yeah.
But at the same time, it's going to be different to sit there and focus on 2 new guys in Boston who are really taking over let's just say it, a legend in Boston. I mean, he played as much as he did, and I think he's top 10 in wins or something like that. Like, or not top 10, but he's close to the top 10 all time in wins.
And he's probably also top 10 most hated by Boston fans,
which I don't get. But that's a story for another time.
Me neither. But we've had Philadelphia's had their sins in the past too. Kind of the same thing.
So regardless, that's the game that people wanted it to be. Kind of a blowout, but I believe that I don't have the exact final shot total in front of me, but I think shots that night were either 31-22 or something like that.
It was pretty lopsided.
Maybe it might have been even more than that. I think it might have been 36-25 or something like that. But that's the point. You went in there, and it's not like you weren't taking shots. Swayman had a really good game, and you had chances. They had like 2 breakaways, multiple power plays. They finally scored on 1 power play. Legitimately scored on that power play, by the way, with most of your top unit. So it's look, Keith Yandel setting up Sean Couturier. That's what you're going to start to expect to see. So that was good.
Something to get excited about.
The thing that I took away from Tuesday was the fact that it is how many of the Islanders' best players. It's Barzal. It's Anders Lee making his preseason debut. It's Beauvillier again. It's defensively, it's Pellick and Dobson and like everybody's playing, right? Like I think who else was on that line? It was Lee with Barzil and Palmieri, I think. So you've got like that going. I think Brock Nelson played, Josh Bailey played. Like they sent out the legit lineup top to bottom, and you were headlined by, I don't know, like you were headlined by one line from the previous night, and I think it was the fourth line. So I think it's Nick Aubé-Kubel playing with Connor Bunham and playing with, like you didn't exactly have your top line.
You didn't bring out the big guns.
But to get into the final 20 seconds while you're trying to kill a penalty, by the way, at the end of regulation of a game that now you're going to lose. You're down 2-0.
Sure.
And Martin Jones is still standing on his head at that moment until finally they get one by him again on that power play because it's all over the place.
Right, and you can't blame him for pretty much anything that night. He played really, really well.
Right, and that's the thing. So I didn't think it was completely fair. Like I get what the numbers previously said about Martin Jones, and I get how there's a little certain instability.
There's some hesitation.
Goal, and things like that. So I get it. He hasn't, to me, looked as bad as everybody wants to make him out to be. I agree. I'm not sitting here saying you want to lean on him this year. If you have to lean on him this year, you're in trouble.
Right.
But I am sitting here saying that when you do call his number, I think you can, like he's shown you can get a good enough start to win a game.
Listen, I was a pretty big critic of Martin Jones, and I did it on this show, and I did it in private, and I didn't make it particularly mysterious how I felt about him. I think it was a risky signing. I still continue to think it's a risky signing because, again, it's a pretty small sample size in the preseason against some less than sharp competition. But for what we've seen so far, Martin Jones looks supremely solid. And if he can, with a smaller role, not having to play 78 games a year, I'm exaggerating, but not by much. In that smaller role where he can be a backup and play 30, 35 games.
Right.
Hopefully. Maybe 40 if, whatever, God forbid, knock on wood, et cetera, et cetera. He looks like he can be a solid option this year.
Potentially. I don't want to make it seem like he's perfect in any way.
Right. Me neither.
And here's the thing. The first preseason game he played in, he plays half the game. He was not very good. He gives up 3 goals on 11 shots. Just by the numbers, whether it's his fault or not, because 2 of the goals were power play goals he had no real shot on.
Right.
Doesn't matter. It's not going to look good when your goalie is making is allowing 3 on 11.
Right.
Making 8 saves out of 11 shots.
There's no way to excuse that.
But I'll go back in and I'll find his other games really quick just to bring the whole point around, because he played last Saturday, he played Tuesday, and he kind of unexpectedly played on Friday. It was supposed to be Carter Hart's game. Carter Hart had a maintenance day on Thursday, and they held him out of the game. And he was back at practice on Saturday. So calm down, everybody. He's fine. But so he made, where is this at? So he made 21 saves on 22 shots on Saturday's game last week, which is where we were coming into this week's show, basically. And that's why we were still sitting there going, listen, that first game was rough, but he adjusted, and 2 nights later gave you that.
Right.
Now, I get it, not playing Washington's best by any stretch, but gave you that. Take it, definitely take it. Even in a game where he lets up 3 goals like that against the Islanders, he makes 27 saves. And you're not playing your best lineup either, so you're assuming you're going to get more defensive support. So,
right,
that's good enough. I mean, to me, that's if they're taking 30 shots and you're going to get 27 saves, I mean, it's a 900 save percentage. Is it great? No, it's not. But that's kind of what you need to expect from your goalie who's a backup.
I was going to say, it's serviceable for a backup. That's about what that number is going to look like on most nights on most teams.
And then he gave you 28 out of 32 on Friday's game, which, again, that's not a good save percentage. But it's the Washington Capitals at full strength with a lot of guys and a couple goals anyway, where, in particular the last one, where what are you supposed to do when it's a cross-ice pass to a guy who's moving really fast like that, and you have to go cross-crease? It's not easy to do. I didn't think, personally, that Ivan Provorov played that 2-on-1 very well.
No, he didn't.
And that's the problem. Like, you need to have everything from in front of you. Like, it's not always going to be. I mean, and like, how's the first goal his fault? How's the first goal when Keith Yandle just gives it away right in front of the net? How is that Martin Jones' fault?
Nope.
And that's where we're already getting started with this stuff. Like, all 4 goals were Martin Jones' fault because you don't like him. Not you, but you know what I mean. Don't do that. That's like what would happen every time Andrew McDonald was on the ice, and it was his fault whether or not he actually had anything to do with it.
A lot of times he had something to do with it.
I know, but you know what I mean. Like, it just didn't make any sense.
You have to look at his body of play outside the goals, right? You have to look at the saves he's making. You have to look at his positioning. You have to look at like how he's playing the rest of the game, especially when the goals aren't his fault.
There was a save, and somebody screenshotted it. I wish I could remember who screenshotted it and put it on Twitter, that made it seem like that was making fun of the fact that everything was Martin Jones' fault. And he makes a save on the play, by the way. It wasn't like it was a screenshot leading to a goal. But Lars Eller's in the slot with 4 guys standing around in a box that is so spaced apart that he could walk down Broad Street and eat a sandwich in the process before he takes that shot. And Jones does make the save on that. But that's the defensive structure that in at least the third period of that last game went out the window. And that bothered me. It was... For 2 periods, you actually played a relatively strong defensively structured game. You gave up 1 goal kind of on a fluky play, which is not even fluky. It's just off a turnover. It bounced around a couple times, pinballs into your net because Eller taps it barely, and it's out of the reach of 2 other guys. And what's the reason, though? It's a prolonged 4th line shift, 3rd pairing shift in your defensive zone. We know what that is going to lead to. Bottom line, end of story.
Big opportunity is probably a goal.
When they are out there, if you don't know by now that they need to have at most 40-second shifts and it's get off the ice quick and let the other guys play, and their ice time is going to come from mostly penalty kill beyond that, it's got to be quick, and you can't get stuck with them on the ice. You cannot get stuck with them on the ice to have any form of success. You've got to be, especially... we're gonna bounce back and forth, but especially with it's right here. This in mind.
Okay. Right. I was gonna get there. We did see that roster cut you were talking about.
Well, it's this, but it's what happened afterwards as a result of this with that to the 4th line that makes this whole thing kind of come full circle. Because forget about the fact that Morgan Frost got sent to the AHL. That's not the big... it's a big deal, but that's not the reason your 4th line now becomes even more of a situation when they're on the ice. If Scott Lawton's on the ice as part of that 4th line, you have a guy who moves a little bit. You have a guy who increases the speed of that line collectively, because it's not going to be done with Nate Thompson and Nick Aube-Kubel. Even though Nick Aube-Kubel can move, you can't rely on that. You've got to be able to move and cover properly and things like Lawton's the most defensively responsible of any of the players on that line when it's in its usual shape, and then can move the best too.
Right.
Like, he's the most well-rounded player on that 4th line when he plays on that 4th line. It's obvious. I mean, we've talked about this before. How much of a luxury is it to sit there and say, well, a guy like Scott Lawton can be your 2nd line winger or your 3rd line center or whatever it is, but I have him on the 4th line left wing spot. That's really nice to do, that you have that many guys above him that you can say, let's play them instead. And he sits in the 4th line. I don't disagree that if you were going to say Morgan Frost does not make this team and does not get to start the year as the 2nd line center or 3rd line center or whatever, I do not agree that Scott Lawton was the only option, but I do agree it probably is the best. I don't know what I think you're sacrificing too much by moving Giroux back. And I saw that suggestion a lot. But I think you're sacrificing too much by moving Claude Giroux back. And let's be real about something as we record this, because the last couple of weeks we've done the nighttime record after Sunday and things like that. I am not going to put it past this team in the next couple of days, potentially, to not be looking at waivers. So if there's a possibility, we could end up recording the show and getting that late news drop that is, well, guess what? Because, by the way, I don't know if you realized this. I found this out earlier this week. I did not know this was a thing. The waiver wire is now at 2 o'clock, not 12 noon.
I thought it was always at 2. Was it at 2 last year?
No, it was noon.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's new.
It's been noon for a little bit because it was always wait for noon to see who clears, wait for noon to see who's on waivers.
Okay.
And now it's 2 o'clock.
Interesting.
Which a lot of people, I've seen a couple people who go, I can't stand this because, and I feel like I know, look, do I think I know the reason? Absolutely I do. Because for all of our friends, maybe friends and listeners on the West Coast, I don't know where you're listening from, but if you're listening on the West Coast, we thank you for it.
Certainly.
If you're out there, if you're out there in Vancouver and you wake up at 7 a.m. in your time, it's already 10 a.m. And you have 2 hours until the waiver wire hits, and you're just kind of getting started with your workday. So 2 is a little bit more realistic because it's 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Right.
It makes it a little bit more realistic for people to kind of get through.
Have a morning beforehand.
Well, and to make these decisions, I think especially day of, because sometimes teams are waking up after a preseason game going, you know what, the night before we watched the game again and stayed up until 2 a.m. making these decisions, and now we want to have time to sleep on it and wake up again and say, is that really the right choice? If there was any discussion left on said player. I think that's what it is. I don't know. Doesn't make a difference. All I'm trying to sit there and say is that I don't know. Maybe at 2 o'clock they do put a claim in. And it's really funny because I had said last week before we wrapped the show, I ended up going on the O&B Puckcast last week, and I did get asked, is there any chance they would make another roster move? I did not think through this avenue potentially, but this actually I wouldn't put it past them.
Like, I would have the space to make a waiver claim at this point?
Yes.
I guess Kevin Hayes' money will be off, right?
Bingo.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
And if you really want to be technical about it, if you will, they could pick up 2 guys I saw that were getting, or not 2 guys that were getting discussion. One guy I saw getting discussion, and one guy whose name I saw that I'd said not a centerman, but a guy who I wouldn't hesitate to consider. And there's a reason, and I'll go into it. But Logan Brown is on, and I saw a lot of people discussing his name, and he is a
I do not hate that.
And he's a cap minimum player because he's a young player, so he makes $750,000.
Former first round pick or early second round pick?
First rounder, 11th overall.
11th overall, okay. I knew he was picked early for sure.
So now here's the catch with that though. I don't know what kind of message that sends to the guy you just sent down if you claim a guy who was an 11th overall pick in 2016
and promise him a roster spot
versus a 27th overall pick in 2017. What is the difference? You know, like I would just play with Morgan Frost at that point and move forward if that's really where things are. I saw instead of, because the only other forward that's left, the 2 forwards that are basically left with Morgan Frost being sent down are Jackson Cates and Garrett Wilson. And here's the catch with this. Garrett Wilson does not have a contract. He actually played pretty well in Friday's game, by the way, because he gets into a fight. He's moving around.
He played his role.
His name was called multiple times in terms of playing his role. Now he's on that 4th line that got caught on the ice for a goal, but
that's going to happen.
But give and take. He stood up for a teammate, or he stood up for himself when he laid a hit on somebody. So he knew something was coming. He's able to stand up for himself and fight. He played his role fairly well, all things considered. He definitely had, for the final preseason game, looking for an NHL 2-way contract here, he had a noticeable game. I think they like him. I think that he probably, that's actually the roster move I think that's really coming. I think
pretty minor deal.
The next day is, here's the NHL contract, or the 2-way contract. He's on the NHL roster now. He's not on the tryout anymore.
Okay.
That's what I think is coming. But there's another name that hit the waiver wire who makes just a little bit more than $1 million. He makes like 1.3, which again, starting Kevin Hayes on, say, IR takes care of that.
Gives you plenty of time, right? You can always waive him. It's fine. There's plenty of ways to get out of it.
You could waive him, or you could waive, say, Nick Aube-Kubel.
Oh, no.
Like, I hear you, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you could waive a guy like that and say he's going to get bumped because that's where we are. You know what I mean?
Okay, hit me with this name.
Chris Wagner.
Okay.
Because Boston put him on waivers yesterday, and I just see a guy, and by the way, another one of these Boston-type guys who Kevin Hayes knows. He was hanging out with Kevin Hayes during the early parts of the pandemic. Like, bring your friends to Philly.
He'd make a nice little third line center while you're waiting for Kevin Hayes to come back. Derek Brassard slides up.
I don't think he's a center, though. I think he's a left winger.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, but
well, either way, he slots in for Lawton on that wing, and put him wherever you want. Right.
And he slots in for Lawton in a way where he's not. You're not sacrificing speed. I would say, like, he moves better than anybody else they have on that fourth line at the moment.
Not saying a ton.
No, but I think like.
Do we just want to put JVR on that line and call it the quicksand line?
Nah, you can't do that though because of the fact that first of all, then you're really slow.
Yeah, that's why you call it the quicksand line. Because everybody looks like they're skating through quicksand.
But can I go back to Morgan Frost for a second because this was something that I wanted to say because we both had something, at least one thing. I had two, which we'll get to one way later because it's so minor compared to the actual roster of the team. People were acting when Morgan Frost got sent down, and I understand. Morgan Frost came into camp with an opportunity. Kevin Hayes is not going to play for the first 6 weeks, not of the season, but from the start of training camp.
It looks like a big, bright audition.
It does. And now, look, bright side of the end of this little 6-week thing, Kevin Hayes skated on Saturday with the rehab group.
Fantastic.
That's great. Your season is still, as we sit here, 5 days away from starting, and he's out skating with a rehab group. He's not going to play in the month of October, but you're trying to target potentially like that early November stage, if possible. And if he's skating now, you can at least leave that possibility on the table. I don't know if that means he's going to be back. I also would like to, full disclosure, I don't know how fully effective he's going to be right away. It's not an easy injury to come back from, and you really need to tread lightly on that because of the fact that before you get a guy who is just kind of washed for the season because you re-aggravate it and play through it, and sometimes you can try to play through it and never be the same, to be honest.
Right. We've seen that do it. We've seen that a lot.
I'd rather Kevin Hayes in year 3 of a 7-year contract not be good enough this particular year and not be as healthy but not further injure himself to have a full off season and come back and be ready.
How many times did we beg Wayne Simmons to go get surgery, heal up, get better, feel better, and not just play broken all season?
How many years in a row did this happen to Claude Giroux? I mean, it's the generic way of saying the abdominal injury, right?
Yep.
Like you get that surgery done, and even if you get the surgery done or not, when you do in an off season, you're never really as fully effective as you would have been.
Right.
And that's a little scary to think about because the fact, now listen, Kevin Hayes at 70% is probably going to be better than Morgan Frost at 100% right now, especially trying to come back from an injury. But this is kind of the reverse of what we usually have happen. Instead of not having the news when we record the show, we do have this in time. So the night before we sat down to do this, Morgan Frost goes and plays a preseason game, and I get his preseason in the AHL, but he has 2 goals and 1 assist, which is exactly what they wanted to see.
Yep.
So, and there were, there were cryptic little lines dropped by some players, like in the sense that like there were players sitting here saying we just told him go down, do his thing, we'll see him back here before you know it. One of them who said it yesterday, I'm trying to remember which players they even gave. Maybe it was Cam Atkinson who said it, who goes he'll be back in the top 6. So
okay.
that doesn't just say he'll be back soon, a la the Joel Farabee route.
Is there a chance that they just sent him down to play a couple of AHL preseason games and he gets called up before Friday?
I guess there's always that chance because I wonder how much, truthfully, this is a thing. I wonder how much cap space they have if they have
to squeeze it.
Well, the problem is that, like, I don't know. I mean, I guess at that point you wouldn't give Wilson a contract, but they need to know that answer by.
Well, and like you said, once they hit day 1, they get the LTIR space from Hayes.
Well, I don't know if that's the other thing. I don't know if Hayes is going on LTIR. He might just go on he might just be an IR type player because LTIR kind of immediately takes the first 10 games out of play.
Yeah, but was he going to play in the first 10 games anyway?
It was 9 to 10, but what happens if it's not 9 to 10 and it's 8? That's
okay,
what you're going to say.
I mean, you just kind of take that risk in Tampa Bay, don't you?
I hear what you're saying. The other thing I would say is that, like, listen, Garrett Wilson doesn't make this team if not for the Kevin Hayes injury right now.
That's fair.
So whether you give him a contract or whether you don't, I don't think it makes that much of a difference because of the fact that he's going to be the first guy to go whenever Kevin Hayes is ready, and then you can bump Scott Lawton back. And like the only reason, yeah, like because it would still work the same way. Because right now you're replacing Kevin Hayes with Scott Lawton, not Morgan Frost. That was the difference. So if that's the case, then I don't see how if you were ready to bring Morgan Frost back, the first guy that goes isn't Garrett Wilson, and Frost comes back and reassumes a role in the middle six, and you go from there. That being said, now let me get to the beef that I had with this, because I'm sorry, but the reactions that I saw to this made it sound like Morgan Frost was Wayne Gretzky getting cut. Like, come on.
Like, the kid played okay.
He didn't stand out well enough in any of those preseason games to give you the sense that he was ready to take that jump. Now he goes to the minors and plays like that. Now you're going to have to take notice. It's just a question of where he plays. And I get it. I need to go back and pull up the exact number because I get it. It's 5 years post-draft. People are now starting to think, it's been 5 years since you drafted him. Why isn't he ready? Why isn't he in the NHL? I saw a comment that came through, something that said he might never play in the NHL at that point, which, by the way, joke's on you. He's already played in the NHL, technically.
I mean, I think that, yeah, right. I think he meant as a regular.
I know, but I'm saying, like,
I'm sure.
I don't see... It still doesn't make any sense to me. So let me go and pull up something really quick, because I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was cool to give up on players when they have 22 games of NHL experience. And hold on, wait a minute. How much time has he played in the AHL while we're at it? Oh wait, that number is only like 41 games.
Right.
So you've played 41 games. So you've played 63 games, 64 games professionally in your entire career. And that means you're not good enough to play professionally, period? Like, knock it off. I mean, he got drafted, and he played 2 of the best years of his life because they made him a +1, +2 prospect in the OHL.
Right.
So you had to fess up right there that you gave up 2 more years of him to play at that level. No other level. He can't play at the AHL. Or he can after that, obviously, but not when his team's making Memorial Cup runs.
Right. Why would he?
And the Phantoms are not making AHL playoff runs.
Right.
So what's going to happen? He's going to play he's going to go for the Memorial Cup. He's going to play at the junior level until his season's over. And then, oh wait, there's no pro team to go play for because he's not going to the Flyers right away. Oh well, season's over. Now you train. Has he taken that step? No, he hasn't. But that was supposed to be what last year was for. And there's no doubt in my mind that if he's a healthy player in March when everything's going off the rails, he's playing.
I think this fan base is a little scarred by Nolan Patrick, the ghost of Nolan Patrick.
Well, yeah, down to the draft year, because I had somebody tweet at me, with all due respect here, tweet at me and say that they've missed on 3 2017 picks, and I wanted to know who the third one was, because I'm sitting here going, obviously you're referring to Frost right now, because Frost just got sent down. You're referring to Nolan Patrick getting traded in the offseason, but who exactly is the third pick?
And by the way, the Nolan Patrick trade helped you get Ryan Ellis, but whatever.
For real. Get Ryan Ellis, who, by the way, like, listen, who's done what? Made 1 mistake in the playoffs?
Right.
I'm sorry, or preseason. I'm sorry, made 2 because you got scored on a power play where he took the penalty. And there was 1 penalty he took in that game, by the way, that was a little bogus because he's using his stick to protect himself, and they called a cross-check or a roughing or whatever.
Right.
So, otherwise, he made 1 mistake. He didn't get a shot through and got caught up in the offensive zone.
Right.
And it's a 2-on-1, and they scored off of it. But if that's the only thing I can pull, come on, you know?
Right. With 2017 drafts, so you got, right, the Nolan Patrick. But I just think we're looking at the Morgan Frost situation, and we see a guy who was hurt and has a couple of injury, I don't want to call them injury problems because he's so young and they're not recurring enough to call them an injury problem, but you know what I'm saying. There's some concern there.
The concern is legitimate to a point because of the fact that I always can't stand or I view a guy as injury prone to an extent when you sit there and go, oh, he did something to his leg again. And leg meaning, tweaked a groin, pulled a hamstring,
And
something
that brings,
like that, and, like Sam Moran.
I was going to say, and that brings me to Sam Moran, another fairly recent first-round draft pick that people are kind of, it's starting to look like a bad pick type thing.
Because there's a difference between every time you turn around, he tweaked his knee in some way. It's a motion thing. You moved in a certain way. Getting hit and then finding out you have a bad shoulder and need surgery and your season's over is not the same thing.
I understand.
A hit. He took a hit. It's not. He didn't say I'm going to go into this battle in the corner or behind the net and get hit on purpose to hurt my shoulder. He's doing what he's trying to play the game. It's a physical game. End of story. I mean, if you want to go anywhere from that, ask Washington today, who gave an update just recently, by the way. So I will say what happened, and bring it full circle anyway. But ask Washington, who watched their captain and leading scorer, Alex Ovechkin, go off the ice with an injury for trying to deliver a hit, not getting hit.
Right.
He was delivering a hit in that spot, and it would have been a perfectly fine hit. Like, it wasn't like it was an illegal hit, but he delivers a hit, and he goes to get up, and all of a sudden, there's something wrong with his leg. He's not putting any weight on his left leg. He's limping really badly. This is the last game before the preseason, and their next game is what, Thursday?
Also, I'm not 100% sure on how clean that hit was. It was a little in the numbers for my personal liking. But
it's very close. It was very close to the new cross-check, yes.
I was going to say, I'm not going to jump all over it. I'm not saying it was filthy, but it was a little more borderline than I think you're saying.
Ovechkin got a penalty against Boston in an earlier preseason game for that very same type of hit delivery. But
doesn't mean he learned a lesson. Alexander Ovechkin doesn't learn his lessons.
You think they're going to learn a lesson from this? It's going to be about a month, and then they're going to.
Alexander Ovechkin looks at a one-game suspension as a treat.
Well, he didn't get suspended. Let's not go that.
I just mean in the past, he has gotten suspended a game here, a game there for hits, and he just treats it like a vacation.
That's not here or there anyway. It's, so he goes off the ice though, and he's done for the game. Which that's not surprising.
There's concern.
There's concern because he can't come back. It's not
and
surprising.
He's your captain.
It's also not surprising because it's the last game of your preseason, and you're going. He could have.
Anything gets him the rest of the game off.
He could have bruised his knuckles fighting somebody, and they would have said, "Don't come back because we're not letting you take a chance at this point."
Yep.
He
could have had a hangnail.
Right. Exactly. And it's little things like that. So he doesn't come back. I wasn't surprised by that. They just put out he's not practicing today. They're calling it day to day. So it's no timeline that's really significant, but it's also he's not able to practice.
He's not necessarily going to be 100% for the first night of the season, which is not what you want to say.
Quite possibly, but that's where you're at, right? Like it's. But I'm saying, like, what I'm saying from that is that that's not like that's an injury that it happens in the course of a game. Like, stuff happens. It's a physical game. Sometimes you go to lay a hit and you get hurt, or you get hit and get hurt. It's just that possibility always exists, and it exists for every player. But it's not like Morgan Frost went out there and said, gee, it's only 2 games into a season where I could have a really big role because guys are going to be going up left and right. Everything with COVID the way it was, where you could have a guy on the list for a day, so it means you have to call somebody up. That could always be your chance to stick in the lineup. You have one good game, they say, well, we're going to scratch somebody else next game, right, even if that guy's able to come back. And he goes and he gets hit, and his shoulder's done for, and he goes out with surgery. He has surgery, and he's done for the season. It happens sometimes. So a guy who was part of the picture in a season where you eventually built enough success that you traded for 2 people who took him out of the equation for the rest of the season, he's not able to play as of March because the whole world shuts down. The league shuts down. There's nothing going on. And it leads to we're not going to be able to have playoffs until midsummer, almost late summer. So it's July and August that you're really getting back into the swing of things. And on top of it, in the meantime, we've canceled the rest of the AHL season. It's over.
Right. There's nowhere else to go.
There's no minor leagues. So you're just skating around aimlessly in practice, and that's all you can do. Then you have the next season. It's going to be a shortened season. We're going to start in January. We're going to have guys up and down probably because there's back-to-backs all over the place, and 3 and 4s and 5 and 7s and crazy stuff like that, or whatever, right? 5 and 8s, 4 and 6s, you name it, all over the place. And he plays 2 games and gets hurt.
Yep.
And the season's over. 2 games, 4 games into the season collectively, and you've got 52 games left as a team, and he can't play in any of them because he's done.
Yeah, just supremely unfortunate.
So call me crazy, but a guy who's only played 2 games in 18 months might not look quite ready in the preseason of the first season he's actually able to play.
Well, and that's why I wonder if maybe there's some truth to the go get some AHL games to blow off the rust a little bit, go dominate a little bit.
And get your timing down and play like a player who has the offensive skill set. Let me make it clear off of this preseason. Morgan Frost played perfectly well defensively. He actually played as responsible as you would want him to play in the role that they were trying to get him to have. But he cannot be a completely invisible player at 5-on-5 and offensively. And aside from a really nice play made by Oscar Lindblom to get him the puck in the slot with a good scoring chance, and he was not able to score. Aside from that and one fake shootout goal, because the shootout was just done for practice, he did not show up on the offensive side of the game. And that's the area where the balance needs to be found. He very much, and he's not the same type of player, so I'm not trying to make a comparison here. But it feels like Sean Couturier again. Like, he's got the defensive part of his game not down, but he kind of has.
He's pretty good at it.
Like, he's focusing more on it. Like, he had a play in practice where he got beat to the net in a scrimmage by Elliot Desnoyers. Now, with all due respect, because Desnoyers had also played in a preseason game and had a really nice showing where he was actually a standout, you don't want your potential second-line center getting beat by a guy who's going back to the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League in a couple days. No. That's the problem, right? So I'm not calling him perfect defensively. What I am saying, though, is that what happens when you know that that's such an important part of your game, and also probably what the coaching staff is emphasizing. You're a team that gave up more goals than anybody last year, basically. Why not put the focus on, like, every player is going to be told, we need to keep the puck out of our net. If you're a young player at 22 years old, and that was a big deal, you're going to put the emphasis on, I need to be better in my own zone first, and then I'll try to score when the opportunity arises. He just doesn't create it that often at the NHL level. And that's where the timing might be off. That's where a little bit of time to build confidence. It's got Joel Farabee from 2 years ago written all over it. You're not ready at the start of the year. Go down, keep playing at a high level, and we'll see you back here in no time. And that no time could be, I don't know, the first game in November when they're back home after a Western Canada trip against Arizona.
Oh, no. See, I think there's a chance he joins the team on that trip.
4 games in?
Yep. Because you have 3 days off after that Florida game. You got plenty of time to bring him up, give him a practice before you head out to the West Coast.
There's only one reason I don't think that's the case, and I will be able to give you a reason in about, I need a second to pull up the schedule just to see, because it's not a schedule I look at every second.
Are they not practicing?
No, it's all right, so next weekend also happens to be when the Phantom schedule.
Oh, it's the Phantom season. Okay.
So he's going to play 2 games, and then he has, by the time they would get to Monday of that week,
some time off.
Talking about, no. He has 4 games in the books with the Phantoms too.
How much time did Joel Farabee have with the Phantoms?
I thought it was something like 6.
I believe it was 4.
Maybe it was 4.
I believe it was 4 points in 4 games, and he came back up.
It might have been 4 Phantoms games, and I think the Flyers had played 5 or 6 by that point, and then he was up. Yeah. So I don't know how long it's going to be. I'm not trying to sit here and say that he won't be back. He'll be back at some point. The question is he back really early on? Is he back? Is he even back because of the absence of Kevin Hayes, or is he just back because he impresses enough and they go, we need this guy in the lineup? Look, everybody should be ecstatic if he comes in and they think he's second line center quality, and then he runs with the opportunity then, and when Kevin Hayes comes back, you go third line. Wouldn't that be great?
That'd be fantastic.
Because then that's real depth. Like right now, that's the biggest concern.
That gets Nate Thompson out of your lineup.
I don't know if it does.
That gets Derek Brassard out of your lineup?
No, I think they moved Derek Brassard to the wing at that point.
No, I'd rather just move him down and get Thompson out altogether.
I think if there's going to be a guy on that 4th line that comes out, it's Aubé Bell.
I mean, I'm also fine with that. But, well, listen, we've talked about the past a little bit here. We've talked about the recent past with the preseason and Morgan Frost's recent injury past. Let's dip a little further into the past and talk about the Flyers Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Because
there they are. We're pulling the Band-Aid right off.
So,
the reveal.
if you're watching on our YouTube channel, search YWT Podcast on YouTube, then you'll notice that we have a banner on the screen. It says Holmgren, Tocchet, to be inducted into Flyers Hall of Fame. Now, Kevin, is there possibly, maybe, potentially a name missing from that list?
I don't know. You tell me.
Lou Nolan? I'm sorry for the mic pop, but Lou Nolan? Hello? The man who's been your in-house announcer since 1971, 72. The man who has been with the organization longer than anybody. The only remaining remnant from the Broad Street Bullies days, from the Spectrum, from... hello?
Well, that wasn't the only name on the list that was from the Broad Street Bullies days, so let's not say that.
I know, but...
All right.
Come on, man. The only guy who's still...
Let's remember all six finalists were worthy.
Yeah, and I'm not denying, I'm not taking away from the people who were there. But why? I would personally, if you're a voter, and you put your ballot in, and you did not check off Lou Nolan's name, why?
Yeah,
why?
I hear you. Listen, I don't know. I don't know how the voting process completely works. Okay, I know that it goes to multiple people. I know that it's not as simple as, hey, media, you pick it. Like, it's alumni pick it, previous Hall of Famers. There's a whole progression of people.
The whole Flyers nepotism club. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Listen, Lou's not one of the boys.
It's not that, though.
Was Holmgren in the locker room? Yes, he was. Was Tocchet in the locker room? Yes, he was. Is Lou Nolan in the locker room? I don't think so.
I don't think that's the reason why why he's not in, though.
I don't get it, man.
Here's the thing that I think where the theory is a little bit different. They're two of the same type of player.
That is true.
And you're not having two separate nights to differentiate. Like,
no, they're not.
Like, there was a difference between, like, think about this for a minute. There's a difference between when you induct John LeClaire and Eric Lindros and then induct Eric Desjardins later in the year. There's a difference between when you induct Rod Brindamore and then induct Jimmy Watson. Whether it's difference in era, difference in position, difference in style of play, doesn't matter. There's a difference. And the reason you induct people like Lindros and LeClaire together is because there's a bond there.
Of course.
They share a commonality, whether it's line mates, whether it's they played in the same era, they were teammates. I mean, in that sense, you could have done Desjardins at the same time because there was a link there.
They probably should have done Desjardins at the same time. But.
It didn't make sense, though, because there was a dynamic duo effect to Lindros LeClaire. That's why. They're the same type of player. And if you're only going to do one night, the only other common thread you could have found was to basically, like we said, if you put Paul Holmgren with Bob Kelly,
right,
and say they're both from that.
It's the Bullies. It's right.
The Bullies still kind of. Exactly. And Tocchet was more mid-'80s.
Also, we kind of touched on it when we talked about the nominees for this. You think this keeps Bob Kelly out, or is he back on the ballot next time they decide to do this? Like, do you think they do actually just close the chapter on the Bully days and move on from this? Because this is kind of one of the scenarios we talked about.
No, because he's probably the leading candidate now when it comes back around because of the fact that, again, how do you ignore... Let's be real. Paul Holmgren was a lock to make this. Because everything... Like, just think about how everything's stacked up. A guy who's been in the organization for over 40 years, who's had every position possible, from being a player to an assistant coach to a coach to an assistant general manager to senior advisor, in between that, scouting and all that stuff. He's done it all. To the point where he's literally a semi-retired member of the organization who hangs around on occasion as an advisor.
He sure does.
Okay. But on top of it, when in the last month when the nominees, and he's a finalist, come out for this, and oh, by the way, he's being inducted into the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame this year, too. Do you think that he wasn't going to get into the Flyers Hall of Fame as a result of that? Absolutely.
Yeah, I know.
That one made all the sense in the world. And I get it. There's people who look and see his name and probably just think of the GM days.
Honestly, I'm a little more surprised on Tocchet.
I was too, because the fact that I thought what you were going to try to do was find a common thread with the era more than... Like, I don't know. Like, I don't remember. Truthfully, I don't remember the induction, like the nomination process and the voting process, without knowing the actual results of the voting being so public. Like, they announced finalists, and that made people like that almost made you think that like to an extent you're almost surprised that it wasn't put to a fan vote as part of it, like because of the fact that you go, why would anybody even know that? Sometimes they like
just release the names.
Right. If I remember correctly, when it was the last 4 that I can remember, which I've been to all, lucky for me because they do these ceremonies so well every time. I've been to pretty much all of them.
Nice.
That you go, when they just announced Lindros Leclerc, they just announced Lindros.
Press
Leclerc.
release, Holmgren Tocchet,
right.
Boom.
Right. They just announced it. Hey, by the way, we're adding a Hall of Fame. The only other thing they would typically do is say, hey, by the way, they're probably adding to the Hall of Fame this year. You get a report like that, and then you would go, oh, here they are. Here's who's going in.
And then sometimes you hear like what the night is going to be.
Right.
Like what game it's going to be.
Which, by the way, for this one, is going to be November 16th against Calgary. So, I kind of like, by the way, nice and early. Hit us early in the year with it. They've done some of these in February and like near March.
Little surprised they didn't go for Pittsburgh because that's where Tocchet won a ring. Did he win a ring?
Yes.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't toss that at him.
The only reason I can Tocchet's going to be a little different though, because obviously the first thing you do is cater the ceremony around your inductees, and Tocchet has a new gig. So if Tocchet's trying to find a night where TNT's not a night, you're looking for the off night. And not only that, but in addition to the induction ceremony before the game on that night, they announced an alumni game coached by Team Holmgren, Team Tocchet, which are also well done, and that's the night before the game.
I mean, I'm pretty sure TNT would give Tocchet the night off to get inducted into the Hall of Fame.
I agree. I'm saying I think I'm saying that
I don't think it really matters what night. If the Flyers could have picked a game if they wanted.
I'm saying I don't know if there was a good night for them to pick a Pittsburgh game with that in mind. It's not a matter of, hey, you can't get any night off, but if you're looking to be specific about what team, especially when they only come to town twice a year now, or like roughly. Like, this isn't last year where Pittsburgh played here all the time.
That's true.
One of the games is in January, like early January, so maybe that's just not a good time for somebody. And then they don't play again against Pittsburgh at home until as you see. This is why I think they would avoid this one. They like these weeknight kind of things for these because it draws a crowd. When weekends always draw a crowd.
That's fair.
Right?
And to be frank, Pittsburgh always draws a crowd.
So you're right. So you're playing Pittsburgh on a Sunday afternoon in April in the final week of the season.
That game's already sold out.
But I don't think you're gonna, in the final week of the season on a Sunday afternoon, say, let's, by the way, have that induction ceremony.
Right, because that game's already sold out.
Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, beyond the point. I hear you. I think that Lou Nolan should go in eventually. I think that the other names on the list are also probably eventually going to find their way in because Bob Kelly's in the same vein as Paul Holmgren with the longevity of being around the organization.
Yeah.
Lou Nolan has that longevity and is a fan favorite. Everybody loves Lou Nolan, that kind of thing. And then you go further into it with the other players that were on the list. Beyond that, I'm trying to remember. I'm actually, there's one that's escaping my mind. I know Simone Gagne was on there, and Simone Gagne, by the way, will get in eventually. I just think.
They just haven't gotten into that era yet.
That's who it was, Mark Recchi. Which I think it's actually kind of a crime that Mark Recchi has played 10 years in the organization. As much as he didn't win with them. I get that, and he won 3 Stanley Cups elsewhere. But he played for 10 years within the organization, and he's a
legitimate NHL legend. Right.
And he's a hockey Hall of Famer.
Right.
You don't think the Penguins Hall of Fame would put him in? I get it. He won a cup with them, but that's beside the point. Like, he's a hockey Hall of Famer.
Yeah, and he will probably get in. I don't know why Mark Recchi hasn't gotten in yet, but either way, I
appreciate them doing 2 of them this year because of the fact that I think because there were so many people. There were enough people that you could have said, you got to do this. You have to do multiples, especially when you haven't done one of these in 5 years. And I don't think they would have waited 5 years if not for there were no plans in 2019-20 to do it, and then 2020 comes in, everything gets shortened. You're lucky you're even having a season in that sense. So there wasn't going to be one last year because it's a fan event. You're not doing it for just yourselves.
For an empty house. No.
So now
can you imagine a banner getting raised in an empty building? That'd be weird. That would be like a chilling sight, man. I don't know, man. I don't like that.
Right, and it's it's been funny too, because speaking of which, the banner is gone. By the way, the banner that the names are being added to.
Oh, is it? It's off getting its editions.
If I'm not mistaken, and I don't think you can see it from my pictures when I because I usually post a picture when I get to a game. I don't think you can see it, but in the picture, but I think there's only 3 Hall of Fame banners there right now, and one. Oh no, you know what? You might be able to actually. I just pulled it up to look. So, the most recent banner, if I'm able to zoom in on this, I don't think I can, of course. Oh no, there it goes. I think the most recent one is like when Ron Hextall and Dave Schultz got in. So Lindros LeClaire, Desjardins, Brenda Moore, Jimmy Watson, their names are gone for the moment from the rafters because they are, I think, in the process of now
adding Holmgren and Tocchet.
But I think that makes sense because on one hand, I'm sitting there going, well, why would they take the banner down so early? This is like even as of the last preseason game, we did
right, especially because you have those 4 games at home and then you go to Western Canada. Like, just take it down then. You're gone for a while.
Except, well, I don't know how long it takes them to really do that type of stuff or to really do it the way they want it to or whatever. But it's only, I mean, they play 4 games at home right away, and then you're only playing 2 more at home in November before you get to this game at home. So that says a lot to me.
All right. So we've talked about the Hall of Fame. I think that's enough of the past. What do you say we turn our attention to the future?
The preview or this stupid thing underneath of it?
Okay, well, let's blow through this real quick. Can we just skip this goal song thing? Because honestly, I'm going to say something. This may or may not be unpopular.
Go ahead.
All 3 songs kind of suck as goal songs.
Okay. I'll say that, how about this? This is what I'm going to say. It's a goal song, right? Okay?
Yeah.
Nobody should care that much what
That's
the song
also
is.
fair.
Here's why, okay? How did you I'm going to throw it to you as a question. How did you feel about Feel the Shake?
Medium.
Okay, fine. Do you come to accept it, though, when your team goes out and scores 6 goals a night in some cases?
Sorry, I went to a game in 1920 in the shortened season. The Toronto game where you score on the empty net and then you score 2 more on Frederik Andersen just afterward, right. And you end up winning, I think, 6-2.
And every single time you played.
I was having a good time by the end of that one.
My point is that if your team is successful in scoring goals, the song is the song. Okay?
Yes. And it's going to trigger serotonin because team goal song. Good.
Right, but like, I'm not a believer in, especially for people who hate the old, like, it's funny. There's people out there who can't stand and very stereotypically use, like, the Flyers as the biggest example of the brotherhood, the history matters so much thing. And it does. Like, I say, there's a respectable history in this franchise. Not saying there's not. But if you're that type of person who goes, well, they're too much in the past. It's always back to the Broad Street Bullies and things like that. But you want to go back to Dupe as your goal song, then stop living in the past yourself. Like,
that's over.
Like,
stop trying to make Dupe happen.
And move on from everything. Like, do something different. Do something new. But at the same time, whether you like these songs, whether you don't, it doesn't matter. Like,
they suck.
There were a couple of options. They played multiple options during the preseason. The very last game against Boston, they only scored 2 goals. They might have been the best 2 candidates, in my opinion.
Okay, what did they play? I wasn't paying super close attention to that.
They played Whoop, There It Is.
Oh, yeah.
Which they did for a Couturier goal, by the way. So everybody who does because Kevin Hayes in the hallway going, Coots, there it is.
Oh, yeah.
They did that, and it did fit really well. And then they played this remixed version. Okay. So a lot of people who are slightly older than I am in the press.
Oh, I know what you're gonna hit me with. Okay.
What is it?
Is it gonna be? Is it the 6ABC theme song?
No.
Oh, because I want the Action News theme song. Because that would be it.
No.
Have you heard that? That would be an incredible goal song.
It is a remixed song, so it's kind of a techno-y kind of song.
Okay.
That samples a song from the 80s that everybody else really recognizes and go, oh, it's that. And then you realize, no, wait, that's not the actual song they played.
Okay.
It just sounds like it because it sampled it. So the song is called Call on Me.
Okay.
Nobody knows it by name.
What's the sample? Does it matter?
The sample is a Steve Winwood song called Valerie.
Okay. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
You know what it is now.
Yep.
Nobody knows it by name. If to hear it, you know it. It
I know,
actually
yeah.
sounded cool. It actually worked.
Okay.
It had the right beat. It had the right cadence to it. It had the right go energy kind of like thing. They played another one too. Like there's one like, what was the one that I heard earlier? Like,
I will say, just on a note, I will say if you haven't heard that Action theme song techno remix, I'll send it to you. It's very good. Big nostalgia.
I know what you're talking about because they did it as part of their warm-ups one time.
Oh, love it. That would be a good. That would be a goal song, man.
Shout out DJ Reed Streets, who kills it usually during games because he does have a nice selection of music.
Yeah, he's solid.
So,
all right, let's get through goal songs and get to hockey.
He's not in charge of the goal song, by the way. He just pushes the button.
Right, I know. All right, let's just get into a full-blown season preview here. It's going to be fairly brief.
We probably got about 10 minutes where we're going to...
Yeah. What are you thinking about this team kind of overall? We don't have to go into predictions just yet. We will get there. We do have a tab for that.
This is where you had me at the beginning of the show almost saying what I didn't want to say at the beginning of the show. I wanted to hold it until now. This is not a good answer for somebody like me because I'm supposed to give you an answer to that question. What do we think, right? My answer is I don't know. I don't know what to think about this team. Okay, here's what I mean by that. I already kind of felt this way going into the through the off season as we were coming up on the preseason, all that type of stuff. This team in this division could finish second or third and get a guaranteed playoff spot out of the division, and
they could host the first round playoff series.
The first round playoff series potentially. I mean, they could. They could also finish seventh and not make the playoffs in a really bad way. I mean, here's where I'm at. Like, there's not a real rhyme or reason to what they could be yet. If there's one positive to take from the preseason so far, for all of the feeling out that there is, for all of the chemistry building, for all of the execution that needs to be worked upon, it's this. Even against Washington's best, now Ovechkin goes off the ice early, so yes, you take a guy like that out of the picture. But even for facing basically Washington's full-on roster and having your full-on roster, and they don't have as many changes as you did in the offseason, so they've got a better lineup.
More chemistry.
Right. Even for that was a competitive hockey game.
Certainly.
You're not losing games 6-1, 9-0. You know, I'm not trying to bring back.
Stop.
I know. I'm saying that's what you need to ask for at the beginning is you may win some, you may lose some, especially early in the year while you're still building that chemistry, working on getting used to new faces. But if you're not losing games badly, like 2 years ago, they played a couple games that were competitive in the early going, but there was also a game they played, I think, against Pittsburgh in that year where they lost 7-1.
Yeah.
And it's miserable from the second that the game starts. But by the end of the regular season before the bubble playoffs, you're losing games 2-0 to Boston, or you're losing games 3-2.
3-1, right? Nice tight competitive games. 3-1 games with an empty net.
You just want to be in the game. I would not be surprised. You honestly should 7 games in October. If you can win 4 of them, you're off to a decent start already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because for 2 reasons. First of all, consider the fact that the preseason games that the Flyers played came against 3 Eastern Conference opponents that you know going in are probably, at least on paper, better than you.
Yeah, probably.
You are playing a team, one of the teams that should be. It's not competitive. Boston's always good. Let's just clear that up right now. Whether they have Tuukka Rask, whether David Krejci left and went to Czech Republic to play in front of his home country, his family, all that stuff, doesn't matter. They're a good team. They're always a good team, and it's just the way it is.
Right. And
then go to the Islanders. The Islanders, in my opinion, there's a reason why I did not say the Flyers could win this division.
Because it's
going to be a crime if that team does not win the division this year.
You're probably right.
That's the next thing. And then Washington, when they play a preseason game, should not have issues because of the fact that they should all be relatively familiar with each other.
Right.
There's not a ton of changes to that team year after year.
There's low turnover.
So if you're not playing perfectly with 2-3 new forwards in your lineup, if you 3 if you want to count Nate Thompson, 4 if you want to count Garrett Wilson, in the grand scheme of things, and 3 new defensemen and a new goalie at the back end, forgive me if your expectations in the preseason were higher, and expecting to be near perfect by the end. They played 6 preseason games. They dressed a full lineup maybe twice.
Right.
Like, it's not going to be perfect. And maybe the good part to that is you're going to start the year against teams like Vancouver, Seattle, teams that you see twice a year.
Yep.
I think there's a looseness to playing those teams.
Absolutely. You're not worried about protecting as much.
As opposed to playing Boston for the first time. Yep. Florida's going to be tough. The West Coast trip, Edmonton's got 2 really talented players right at the top of the list. Calgary and Vancouver again, maybe a little bit of a different story. Can you shock the world, if you will, and beat a team like Boston or Florida really early in the year with a lot of new faces?
I think you certainly can.
Possibly, but can you do that and then win some of these other games against teams like Vancouver?
You want to win the winnable games.
As far as we know, it's a really tough year to even say winnable because there's been so much turnover in the league.
Vancouver is going to be winnable.
It should be.
It's going to be. It should be. Right. Exactly. It is winnable. Whether they will win or not, I don't know. But here's my season preview in a nutshell.
Okay.
I'm going to give you 3 players.
Okay.
These 3 players will determine how this season goes.
I'll see if it meshes up with the 3 that are in my head. Go ahead.
The first one, I'm going to get the obvious one out of the way. It's Carter Hart. If he is what he is, then we're good. And if he's not, then we're in trouble. We all know how I feel about Carter Hart. I'm just going to cliff notes through him.
That's fine.
Number two, Travis Konechny.
Okay.
I think if Travis Konechny rebounds not rebounds, if he continues to do what he's been doing, if he takes a step forward, if he improves, I think he's got a chance to blow up and become a star in the league playing next to Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux.
Okay, and number 3?
Because I think they're going to be just steady and reliable.
Sure.
Number 3 is Kevin Hayes.
Okay.
And I say Kevin Hayes because I firmly believe that he is the heart and soul of the team. In the locker room, on the bench, on the ice, chirping at other team ref, etc., etc., etc. If
That's
Kevin
actually...
Sorry, go ahead.
That's actually a really good way to look at it because, for a couple reasons. Collectively, given his summer, and I say that meaning, obviously, from a personal standpoint, he has something to play for.
Yep.
He's hurting from his brother, the loss of his brother.
And I think he's going to throw himself into this team and this band of brothers
but long before
head first into battle.
Sure. But long before his brother passed away, even toward the end of that off season, what was the story before that? The funny kind of story. Oh, wait. So they traded for Cam Atkinson, who used to play at BC, and they got Keith Yandel, and they got Derek Brassard, who was his teammate in New York. And, so the idea that it was, without it really being like that, it was, look, all my friends are here. They almost are building, like we said, we kind of felt like they were almost building it not around him, but they're bringing in guys who have instant chemistry with him.
Let's rewind 24 months.
Right.
Kevin Hayes is a new Philadelphia Flyer. Takes a little bit of time. That team is good, solid, playing well. But at a certain point, it clicks.
Right.
Things fall into place. Kevin gets comfortable. We start seeing the mic'd up videos. We start hearing I used to ref and the little clips here and there. And that team certainly seemed like they super glued together.
Yeah.
And we're the best team in hockey going into the pandemic. What did we see last season? We saw poor effort. We saw no chemistry. We saw a team that didn't want to play together. A team that just weren't being good hockey players. That's just the simplest way to say it.
Yeah.
And we hear all about, Elliot Friedman calls it a nightmare year on the most recent 32 Thoughts, I'm sorry.
Yes.
he said it was a nightmare year for Philly last year. We hear all about the no team dinners, no practice, no hangouts, no blah, 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 blah. We hear all about the team chemistry issues all over the league.
Right.
This year, it really comes down to if Kevin Hayes comes back,
right,
slots right back into that room,
yeah,
and they join as a unit, man, it really feels like there could be something special in that locker room this year.
Well, it's funny you say that too, because that is one of the positives from the preseason as well. Is at the very least, I'm sorry, when was the last time the Flyers had 2 fights in a game? And in the preseason finale, there's multiple going on.
It's been a minute.
Like that at the very least, you can see that there's a clear bond between, like, in terms of that. Like,
yep.
Hey, these teams really seem to, like, these players seem to really care about each other right off the bat.
And that's in the absence of Hayes.
Right, but that's well, semi-absence, I'll call it.
Wow.
He's around, he's just not on the ice.
The on-ice absence. Right.
But that's already a good step, because it means that you like each other. It means that you're not letting maybe some early hiccups get in the way. You're staying positive. That's why I said, if October turns out to be 7 games, 4 wins, let's say, or roughly that, 4-3-0 is not great. It's not a great record,
no,
but it's not bad either, and it's a stepping stone to what you want it to become. Let's remember something about the team from 2 years ago. They didn't come out in October and do a lot of things convincingly. I mean, like, they go out and they win the first couple games, and then they went on that West Coast trip. They lost to Vancouver in a shootout. Now, they came back in the third period to get it to that point, so it was nice to get a point. But then they had 2 forgettable games against Edmonton and Calgary. Then they come home. They play Dallas. Not a good game. And it wasn't until convincing win against Vegas, comeback win against Columbus at the end of that, like, now all of a sudden your brain went, oh, look, they actually, that's different from a year ago. They have something different in them. It's not perfect yet. And then in November, they went out and won, what, 11 games, 12 games, something like that. It was like a franchise record.
Right.
And by the end of November, you looked at that last game in November in particular, which was the Provorov overtime goal, and something felt different at that point. And then they also got, kind of in the same vein of what you're talking about with Kevin Hayes, they got the ultimate bonding experience, which is one of our own is sick.
Yep.
He can't play anymore. We got to go out there and make the season about him.
Yep. This team has been a chemistry team since the minute Kevin Hayes signed here. They've been a pulse team up and down with the mood in the room.
And that's the thing about it, because what happened when that happened, when Oscar Lindblom goes out of the lineup at that point and he's done for the year, basically, the first couple games aren't very good because it's a shock to your system. It's more human than anything that you're doing on the ice at the moment. Like, that's more fragile.
Bigger than the game.
That's a more life is fragile moment than anything, because even though Oscar Lindblom is working his way back to being full health, full strength, everything's great.
He looks solid.
As we talk about going into this season, everything looks great. At that moment, you don't know what the next couple months hold, and you don't know how far along this could be or whatever.
Which direction he goes.
And what direction he goes and what happens. I mean, it's happened before.
Yep.
It's happened before with athletes where it doesn't get any better, and it turns out to become even more fragile than what the situation is in the beginning. And even looking at a situation where, yes, again, a similar life is fragile moment where one day Jimmy Hayes is co-hosting a podcast with 2 ex-NHLers, another one a former Flyer, who, they're able to talk to Kevin Hayes and get other teammates of Kevin Hayes on the show, and it's great and everything's fun and they're having a ball, and you see how those 2 are brothers. They're exactly the same personality-wise, and then the next day he's gone, and It's a shock to your system. It takes hockey and throws it out the window. It's secondary. But at some point in time, somebody like Kevin Hayes is looking at hockey and going,
that's an escape.
It is my therapy, and it is my way of honoring him.
Especially when playing with guys that he's known as long as he has, that he's close friends with, like Keith Yandel, like Cam Atkinson. Yeah. So I think Kevin Hayes is a big, big, big part of this Flyers team this year.
That's pretty good. So I obviously, you said 3. I mean, I'll tease it because I'm not going to give away all my secrets right away. My usual season opening post is 10 storylines.
Okay.
I will fully disclose because I think it's too obvious not to state it. It's stating the obvious at this point. The number one storyline is, as you mentioned, it's Carter Hart. But beyond that, most of what I have is specific players and then their impact. They're a storyline for what reason? Like last year, it would be outside of actually last year it wouldn't have been goaltending period because everything kind of came in and Carter Hart was pretty much solidified as the number one at that point, and we certainly expected better than what happened a year ago. So my number 1 and 2 were Nolan Patrick, Oscar Lindblom, because these were the two pieces internally that hadn't played the year before that were coming back.
Right.
So this is going to be, in some cases, this is new faces. In most cases, it's not. Like, I'll admit right away, Cam Atkinson's not a storyline for me.
Okay.
Because he's going to just fit into the lineup the way he fits. He's not a guy who I think your season completely hinges upon.
It was a 1-for-1 trade. It makes a lot of sense.
Which, by the way, if I may, because I wanted to say this when we didn't say this when we were talking about the end of the preseason thing, but the goal in the final preseason game, the first one specifically.
Yeah.
I have 4 words to describe that goal for you.
Okay.
Get used to this.
Love it.
Because this is who this is. If you didn't realize, was it as obvious to you as it was to me? Because I tweeted about it afterwards anyway. From the second he made the steal at the blue line, he not only had control of it, but it was, I'm shooting this.
He's shooting it. Yep.
This is all me. I'm shooting.
I can't wait to see what Sign Guy has in store. He's got all sorts of new material. He's got Ellis. He's got Risto. He's got Atkinson. He's like, Martin Jones. Like,
so I'm going to, in fairness, by the way, so as I'm looking at my 10 storylines, I have not a draft. I have like my 10 topics, but I'm going to have to write in detail. I got until Friday, so it's not urgent on a Sunday morning. But I'm going to probably have to alter one of them because I did not really throw Kevin Hayes in there, not even from that standpoint, but filling the Kevin Hayes void is certainly a storyline early in the season.
Absolutely.
And his health. But there's enough on here. I will admit Travis Konechny is another name I bring up in this listing because in a very similar sense, it's much further down on the list. I have let's this way. There's 2 specific players and one very pressing issue specifically from the preseason that kind of get into the top 5 automatically. And then to round out the top 5, if you will, is a topic. If you think you know it, you can acknowledge it based on what I say. But I'm not going to mention said person's name. Okay. But you tell me if you know it based on this phrase I'm about to say, which is, it's a topic we don't like discussing.
I'm not 100%, but okay. I have no idea, but
it's a topic that we've gone over before, or a possibility. Let's say that it's not even a topic. It's a possibility that we've mentioned that we don't like.
Okay.
Because.
Oh, is this trading Claude Giroux?
It's not trading him.
Oh, okay.
But it's the possibility that
he doesn't finish his career here. In some form or fashion.
It's the last year of his contract, and it's the possibility that what happens if this doesn't go well.
Yeah,
that's what it is. It's not that it's the end of an era. Like I would never say that because let's say it this way. I don't know if you happen to catch it. I think you could have because Friday night it was on NHL Network as a whole. They had the Caps broadcast on for the final preseason game, and they bring up how they're surprised that, Sean Couturier and Joel Farabee got contract extensions. I'm surprised Claude Giroux didn't get an extension in the offseason. They're apparently going to wait until the end of the year. I'm surprised by that. He's your franchise player.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? Without, forget what anybody thinks about who actually works around this team, covers this team, watches this team on a regular basis. People around the league sit there and look and go, well, that's kind of weird. Like, he's the franchise.
Right.
And they still think that.
Yeah.
Says a lot.
Sure does. He's been the captain for, almost 10 years at this point.
And I mean, so other than that, like most of the storylines to me are newer players. Most of the storylines, I mean, let's put it this way. In the same vein that I mentioned, like, you're sitting here going, like, oh, is it trading Claude Giroux? No, it's the possibility that this is the last year for Claude Giroux because it all depends on how it goes. They might not trade him because they're still in a playoff spot, but what if they don't make the playoffs and they actually do decide it's time to end the era? I don't know. But I certainly know that if the season doesn't get off to a decent enough start, then another name's going to come up, and that's the coaching staff. That's
absolutely.
Because it's got to be better. It's got to be a better year, and you're supposed to be making adjustments and tweaking things and making the right choices. And I don't know. Like, it's hard to sit there and say it's going to be Chuck Fletcher because Chuck Fletcher did his job. He went
I don't think it's Chuck Fletcher.
And said, and if you saw how much movement he provided, the amount of movement he provided in a flat cap world, in an offseason that kind of demanded this kind of change.
He turned over half of your defensive core.
Kind of almost leads me to believe, though, that if something didn't go right, the organization would look at him and say, it's still in your hands because we trust you to make the right decision on what needs to happen next.
Right.
You've made your bets. You to a degree have put your job on the line because you've made a lot of bets on players that need to perform.
Right.
But you could also just as easily sit there and go, I trust you to make the right call on when it's time to move on from the current group as well if it doesn't go right. Like if there's players that you can move on from, which is probably why the door is wide open with, by my count anyway, I think 12 players signed through beyond this season into next season and beyond to leave the door open for up to 9 or 10 that you could say are not coming back next year.
Yep. That is certainly a possibility.
And at the highest level, that's your Claude Giroux. At the lowest level, it's the low-risk signings you made. It's Keith Yandel, Derek Brassard, Martin Jones, guys like that. And then Nick Aube-Kubel or
various steps in between. Yeah.
Or Justin Braun, guys who have 1 year left that you go quite possibly replaceable at the end of the year anyway.
Right.
But you certainly leave the door open to when we get the money back, how do we address the issue? You know what I mean? Like, that's where you leave the door open for that, but you also have some big names that you're going to sit there and go, I mean, you don't have many. The only real big names I can think of that you have to address in the offseason are Giroux and Ristolainen. That's about it.
Yeah. And the Flyers are in a spot. Go ahead.
Ristolainen's great money to get, getting back if you don't keep him, but it's also a lot to give up for a guy that you decided it was a one-off. There was a big difference between Keith Yandel and Justin Braun eventually didn't work out as a pairing at 5-on-5, and we don't need to keep both of them. We'll move on. And you have Cam York waiting, and you find another veteran on a low-risk signing, a la Zdeno Chara, if you will. Not that he specifically, but like a guy who makes $800,000 in a year, and you say, go for it. And there's a difference between getting that guy and getting, I don't know, like getting a guy like Ristolainen and agreeing to sign. Like, the thing is Ristolainen is not going to be making the money he makes this year, next year, if he's still a Flyer, because he's going to have had a good enough year to make more.
Probably, yeah. Well,
how much more is the question, but again, I kind of go to put a bow on this. It's to go back to the thing I said at the beginning, which is when you make this many additions in the offseason, when you make as many changes as you made in the offseason, it's hard to know what it's going to look like. We haven't even really seen the full product yet, period. And yet you need to get to a point where at the end of the day, you start to just play the games and see where it goes. Did anybody coming in 2 years ago think that they were going to be the best team in hockey going into the middle of March?
I don't think so.
Regardless of whether it ended there or not as a regular season. Did anybody think they were going to be that good? No.
They were the hottest team in the league 3 weeks before 4 weeks before the playoffs were supposed to start.
Exactly, but that's what I'm saying. Like, did anybody think that going in?
No, absolutely not.
And it took some time, right? Like, it wasn't like they brought in Matt Niskanen, Kevin Hayes, and Justin Braun, and everything just suddenly fell into place.
It took some time.
It takes a little bit of time. Did those guys make an impact relatively early? Yes, they did, because Niskanen created a steady environment defensively, and we started to see that at the beginning. And Hayes had the big shorthanded goal against Columbus in October, and you went, okay,
we got something here. Also, I was at that game too.
And that's a fun thing to start with. But to me, Hayes didn't really make his impact until he was doing the belt thing and all that, mid-season also.
When he really got that swagger picked up.
Right, then we started to really feel it. But that's That's months in advance. So, like, I forget how I got asked this, but like I remember bringing up the thing with like how coaching staff, or whatever. And I said they're not going to fire the coaches 3 games into the season because they don't win a game.
Right.
But if you're at Thanksgiving and things aren't going well, it could be the end of the coaching.
You could
staff.
say it
because that's the marker. So get to Thanksgiving with a decent record and be in a playoff spot potentially, or like you could be in a playoff spot, and I think you've got something there.
And then bring in Tortorella.
No, don't bring in Tortorella. Let him do his broadcast stuff wherever he's at ESPN, right?
That's funny. I think so, yeah. But all right. Before we get out of here, we are running up against a little bit of a time wall real quick. Yes, no, do the Flyers make the playoffs?
I hate this question.
Well, it's an even-numbered year, so the answer is yes.
Sure, that's fine. All right, I won't give my answer as a yes or no. I'll just give it as what it really is. They better.
They better. You're not wrong.
Because that's what it is. It's do they? I don't know if they make the playoffs, but they better because
they better.
It's going to change. Even more is going to change if they don't make the playoffs.
Yep. Well,
so there you go.
We'll see. I say yes because I'm a hopeless optimist. And with
that's not my job. So I give you the I don't know, but they better.
The journey starts on Friday, and I'm very excited. And we'll be back next Sunday to talk about it. You can find it wherever you find your podcast: Google, Podbean, iTunes.
It's gonna
Google
be
Podcast.
Yeah, it's gonna be real fun going into doing a show next week, going into the Seattle game.
Oh yeah,
that's just gonna be a lot of fun. Like,
yeah,
there's a part of me that's a little disappointed that there's only the season starts on Tuesday.
Yep.
But there's not.
We get to wait.
We have to wait 3 days.
Yep.
So there's a disappointment to that being the only game, but there's also I think it's gonna be really fun to go into that particular week. I do love that the first 4 games are at home, by the way.
Me too.
It's a rarity anymore, but I kind of really enjoy that.
I can't wait either. And with that being said,
I say let's get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, make sure to check us out on sportstalkphilly.com. I didn't actually get that one out there during the plugs, but I'll make sure to say it now. They got a lot of content over there gearing up for the season. We got that season preview article Kevin talked about. That'll be found over there. You can find it on his Twitter too, at Kevin_Durso, and make sure to follow the show while you're there at YWT Podcast. And with that being said, the season starts on Friday. Nothing else to say. Let's just play the games, man.
Let's just play the games.
All right. See ya.